Imagine for a second that you are just sitting down at your desk. You pull out a blank sheet of paper, right? And you are tasked with writing a letter directly to the future leader of a global superpower. What exactly do you say?
Yeah, that's a pretty wild thought experiment.
Ah,
Because usually, when we look at historical letters or advice given to heads of state, the tone is just so measured.
right, it's steeped in protocol.
Exactly. The language is highly deferential, it's cautious, and it's heavily designed to, not offend anyone in power.
But today, we're looking at a document that basically takes that traditional playbook, tears it up, and just sets it on fire. We're doing a deep dive into a manifesto from the year 2021.
Yes, titled A Messages for Future Chinese Leaders.
Right, authored by a writer named Xuefeng. And I gotta tell you, it serves as one of the most unorthodox, boundary-pushing blueprints for governance that you will ever come across.
Oh, absolutely. And the author really establishes the stakes in the very first breath. Like he leaves absolutely no gray area for this hypothetical future leader.
No, he really doesn't. He presents this stark, unavoidable binary.
Yeah. Xuefeng says that if this leader successfully allows the people to live happily, freely, and in peace, they will be known as the Ziwei Saint.
The Ziwei Saint.
Right, which essentially translates to like a world historical savior.
But the flip side is brutal. If the leader fails to let the common people live happily and freely, the text literally brands them a bastard and a living devil.
A living devil. It is just an incredibly dramatic framing. By starting with such extreme language, the author really sets the stage for a political and social blueprint that demands a complete teardown of traditional statecraft.
And that teardown is basically our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to explore this text purely as an exercise in political theory and mechanics.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought experiment.
And I want to be crystal clear right up front for you listening. The ideas we are unpacking today are entirely the author's own. We're not here to endorse any political ideology, whether that's left-wing, right-wing, or anything in between.
Right. Our goal is strictly to analyze this document and figure out how the society it proposes is actually supposed to function.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where does a manifesto this radical even begin building its utopian vision?
Well, it starts at the highest possible altitude, really, macro geopolitics.
Yeah.
Point number one of the 11 points is just a blunt two-word directive regarding international relations.
2 words.
Yep, follow America.
Wow. Given the, massive complexities of global trade, military alliances, historical tensions, a 2-word geopolitical strategy sounds dangerously reductive. How does the author even justify that?
What's fascinating here is the author's absolute reliance on pragmatism over any sort of political or moral theory. Like, Xuefeng actively strips away all those ideological debates.
So no arguing over which system is morally superior.
Exactly. The text basically argues that a leader shouldn't waste time on philosophical arguments. They should only look at empirical outcomes.
It sounds like the author views modern global history as just one giant A/B test.
An A/B test. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good way to put it.
Like, if you work in tech, you know the concept. You test 2 different versions of a product to see which one performs better. But here, instead of testing a software update, we are looking at the economic fate of entire nations.
That is an excellent way to frame the author's logic, because the text explicitly points to the Cold War era as the ultimate A/B test. The author argues that West Germany aligned with the United States and became prosperous and strong.
While East Germany opposed the United States and became, well, poor and desolate.
Right. And the text doesn't stop in Europe either. It points to the Korean Peninsula, asserting that South Korea became brilliant while North Korea became closed and backward.
So the core argument is just that you don't need a degree in political science or, complex logical reasoning to interpret those events.
Precisely. The author believes the historical facts simply show that confronting the U.S. leads to poverty, while harmonious relations lead to a booming economy.
He even points to China's own history, right?
Yes, noting that the really big economic explosions only occurred after periods of reform and opening up to Western markets.
So the Macri strategy on the world stage is just raw, unfiltered economic pragmatism. Just align with the system that generates the most capital.
Right.
But if the primary goal is wealth generation, how does this blueprint expect the government to operate internally, like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, this is where the text takes a really sharp departure from almost any traditional model of governance. Point 2 dictates that the state must empower entrepreneurs and actively, deliberately weaken its own government structure.
Weaken the government.
Right.
When you hear that, you might just think of like budget cuts or deregulation.
Yeah, But the author goes to an extreme that is really hard to wrap your head around. Xuefeng suggests completely abolishing governmental agencies at the county level and below.
Wait, abolishing them entirely?
Entirely, not just reducing them, but wiping them out and letting entrepreneurs step in to run local civic functions.
That represents a total dismantling of the state's economic engine.
It really does. And point 4 pushes this even further by demanding the dissolution of all state-owned enterprises.
So we're talking about banking, power grids, communications networks.
Transportation, all of it, completely removed from government control. The author argues that the common people possess what the text calls infinite wisdom.
Infinite wisdom, okay?
Yeah, and that market forces will just naturally iterate toward better solutions than any central planner ever could.
But the natural question there is, if the government isn't running the banks or the roads or the local towns, what does it actually do?
In this vision, the state is restricted to doing exactly 5 things. Just 5.
Okay, let's hear them.
Diplomacy, national defense, combating crime, combating monopolies, and providing free education and medical care.
That is the entire scope of the government.
That's a whole list. The author is just systematically abandoning traditional debates over which economic system is best. Point 8 explicitly calls for an end to arguing over isms.
Whether that's capitalism, socialism, communism.
None of it matters to the author.
Which brings up my absolute favorite quote from the document. The author literally writes, as long as the general public likes it, even shitism is acceptable.
Shitism. Yeah, this is a profound rejection of academic theory in favor of pure utility.
Right, if an economic structure works for the people, the author just doesn't care what ugly name you give it.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. But wait, if entrepreneurs replace local government, how does that not turn into a corporate dystopia where businesses rule everything? I mean, think about your own hometown.
Right. If you give all the power to a few CEOs...
and completely remove the mayor and the city council, doesn't that just create an oligarchy where businesses dictate every single aspect of your life?
That is the immediate vulnerability of this model, for sure. And the author does attempt to build a mechanism to prevent it. In the same breath that Xuefeng demands the weakening of government and the empowerment of entrepreneurs, there is a strict mandate to liberalize civil society organizations.
So relying on citizens to form their own groups to push back. But how does, like, a local knitting club or a neighborhood watch actually stand up to a billionaire CEO who owns the water supply, especially when there's no mayor to appeal to?
Well, in the author's framework, state power is replaced by raw collective bargaining power. If an entrepreneur tries to monopolize a resource or abuse a workforce, civil society groups don't lobby a government for regulations.
Because there's no government to lobby.
Right. Instead, they form parallel cooperatives, they organize mass boycotts, or they mobilize huge labor strikes.
Ah, I see.
The state's only role in this friction is its mandate to combat monopolies, which was one of those 5 core jobs. Otherwise, the author envisions an unfiltered tug of war.
The state literally steps out of the ring.
And just leaves the free market to battle it out directly with organized citizen groups.
Which sets up the next major phase of this thought experiment perfectly. Because if the state is stepping completely out of the economic arena, it also has to step back from controlling the daily movements of its citizens, right?
Oh, absolutely. The expansion of individual liberties in this document is staggering. We see this outlined clearly in point 3, which demands total freedom of movement and trade.
Total freedom. Like, what does that look like in practice?
The text calls for fully opening the seas, businesses, the internet, and the physical borders. The underlying philosophy is that capital and human talent must be allowed to seek their highest value without any bureaucratic friction at all.
And the author doesn't just casually support globalization here. The text explicitly demands that the country should allow dual citizenship, triple nationality, or even 100 nationalities.
100 nationalities. It actively encourages citizens to hold passports from all over the world without any restrictions whatsoever.
It fundamentally redefines what it means to be a citizen of a nation.
It really does.
You know, it reminds me of the ultimate open source society.
Open source society, I like that.
Think about how open source software works, right? A small group of original developers creates the basic operating system, just the core foundation that keeps the machine turning on.
Right, the bare bones.
But they don't build the apps. They leave the platform entirely open, and developers from all around the world come in and build whatever they want on top of it.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
In this manifesto, the government is just that bare bones operating system. It runs those 5 core tasks: defense, crime, diplomacy, monopolies, and basic healthcare and education. And the citizens are the developers building all the apps, the businesses, the culture, the trade agreements.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that metaphor reveals how radically this blueprint shifts the societal center of gravity.
Hmm.
The author basically trusts the chaos of the public and the free market far more than they trust the ordered authority of state.
Yeah, that's totally clear.
And nowhere is that more obvious than in point 5, which deals with the media.
Oh, man, this part blew my mind. The government is only allowed to maintain a single press release office. That is it.
Yep, just one office.
Everything else, every newspaper, television station, online platform is entirely run by society.
The author envisions a landscape where independent journalists are just embedded in every corner of the country, representing a multitude of different interests. And the text makes a wildly provocative claim here,
Which is?
that the power of these journalists should actually be stronger than the power of the police.
Stronger than the police. How does that actually function in reality? If a journalist has more power than a police officer, isn't the press just the new police?
Well, the mechanism the author is relying on here is extreme transparency, acting as the ultimate deterrent. In a society where the government is incredibly small, corruption or abuse by those powerful entrepreneurs we discussed earlier, it can't be policed by a massive federal agency.
Because that agency doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. Instead, the author believes a decentralized swarm of journalists will act as the societal immune system. They expose bad actors to the civil society groups, who then hold them accountable through boycotts or strikes.
And as the text cheerfully points out, the government doesn't have to spend a single dime to fund this oversight.
Not a dime.
The trust placed in the individual is just absolute, and that autonomy extends directly to the physical home, too. Point 6 tackles private property, declaring it sacred and inviolable.
Right. The state, political parties, religious institutions, no one has the authority to confiscate it.
The author actually includes this incredibly poetic rule regarding private residences. He says, the wind can enter, the rain can enter, and the king cannot enter.
It is a really lyrical way of establishing a fortress of privacy. The text explicitly bars police from entering a home unless they possess highly reliable clues proving a law was violated.
And this hands-off approach applies not just to physical spaces, but to the realm of human thought, right?
Yeah, point 7 focuses on faith, calling for an ecological diversity of religious groups.
An ecological diversity, so treating belief systems the same way it treats businesses.
Exactly. The government refuses to fund them, but it also refuses to attack them. Religious institutions are simply left to survive or fail on their own merits in the marketplace of ideas.
So it prevents the state from ever enforcing a single moral orthodoxy. So we have painted this picture of a wildly unrestricted public life. You have free trade, open borders, an untouchable free press, and absolute property rights. But the manifesto also has to account for the extreme ends of the human experience.
Right, the margins.
Like, what happens in this society when a citizen faces real danger or when they retreat into their most intimate, private relationships?
Well, the text addresses international obligations in point 9 first. The author places severe restrictions on foreign aid. The hard rule is that the country should not help poor or backward nations, with one singular exception.
Emergency disaster relief.
Right. The wealth generated by this massive economic engine is kept intensely focused on domestic stability.
But for the citizens inside those borders, there's a hyper-specific safety net.
Yes. Point 10 details extreme support for the brave.
If a citizen is disabled while performing a righteous act, say, stepping in to stop a violent crime or saving someone from a burning building, the state guarantees them a lifetime free pension that actually sits above the national average standard of living.
It's incredible. And the safety net becomes even more comprehensive if that citizen is killed performing a righteous act.
The state assumes total responsibility then, right?
Total responsibility. It handles all funeral affairs, financially supports the hero's parents for the rest of their natural lives, and fully funds their children's education all the way through graduation.
It's basically a totally engineered incentive system. The state is too small to police everything, so it financially guarantees the livelihood of any citizen brave enough to step up and maintain public order.
Exactly. It outsources heroism.
But what is truly wild is the whiplash between that kind of public civic duty and private life. Point 11 pivots completely to demand absolute sexual freedom.
Yeah. The government is strictly ordered to ignore the private sex lives of consenting adults entirely.
The author insists that sexual life is a fundamental personal freedom.
Right. The government must not comment on it, and crucially, it must not use high moral standards to judge, shame, or legally kidnap its citizens over their private behavior.
And the text gets incredibly specific to ensure there is no misinterpretation of absolute freedom. It lists examples that would be scandalous in most traditional societies today.
Very specific examples.
We're talking one wife with many husbands, one husband with many wives, three-person or four-person relationships, massive group orgies, affairs between executives and subordinates, or individuals having affairs every single night.
The rule is simply that as long as all participants are willing and no one is being coerced or harmed, the state must look the other way.
The author uses the phrase, let everything flow eastward.
That phrase, flow eastward, is such a vital metaphor for the author's view of human nature. Think of societal moral laws as a giant pressure cooker.
Pressure cooker, okay.
When a government tries to legislate morality, it spends immense resources fighting human instinct. It creates underground markets, stigma, and just massive societal friction.
Right.
By letting behavior flow eastward like water, finding its natural resting level, the author argues you remove the pressure cooker entirely.
Destigmatizing consensual behavior stabilizes society because the state is no longer wasting its energy policing the bedroom.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? We have an ultra-libertarian society with no state businesses, yet it somehow pays for lifetime pensions for heroes and fully free healthcare and education.
This raises an important question, and it highlights the massive leap of faith sitting at the very center of this entire manifesto.
I was wondering about the math on this.
Right. For this society to function without instantly going bankrupt, the author is banking on a specific chain reaction. The assumption is that absolute free markets, zero government interference, and totally unrestricted human movement will generate a scale of national wealth that is almost unimaginable.
They are essentially betting that liberty creates a fire hose of money.
Exactly. The thesis is that by untethering the infinite wisdom of the public and removing all bureaucratic friction, the economy will boom so spectacularly that funding those 5 core government tasks becomes a rounding error.
Just loose change for the government.
Yeah. The author explicitly states that if private property is truly secure, money from all over the world will flow into China. The entire social contract, all the free healthcare and lifetime pensions, rests entirely on the belief that ultimate freedom yields limitless prosperity.
And if a leader actually attempts this, if they follow all 11 points and actually pull this off.
The manifesto's concluding promise is vast. The author tells the future leader that managing the country through these rules utilizes what the text calls the principle of holography.
The principle of holography. How does a hologram relate to statecraft?
Think about how a physical hologram works. If you shatter a holographic glass plate, every single tiny shard still contains the complete three-dimensional image of the whole picture.
Oh, wow. I actually didn't know that.
It's pretty cool. But in political terms, the author believes that the individual citizen is the shard of glass.
Okay, I follow.
If the individual is fully liberated, perfectly secure, and highly prosperous, then that individual perfectly reflects the greatness of the entire nation. By empowering the smallest unit, the single citizen, the nation itself naturally becomes the center of human civilization, and the leader's wisdom is praised globally.
It is a dizzying vision to try and process. When you really sit with these 11 points, it completely breaks the traditional political buckets of left-wing and right-wing that we are so used to arguing about.
It really does.
It takes hyper-capitalist concepts like abolishing state enterprises and letting corporations handle local infrastructure and throws them into a blender with extreme social liberties, hundredfold dual citizenships, and massive socialist-style safety nets for healthcare and heroes.
It refuses to fit into any modern political party's platform. It forces you, as the reader, to evaluate ideas based purely on their proposed outcomes rather than ideological purity.
Right.
It asks a highly uncomfortable question: what actually works to make a population happy and prosperous?
Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over. If we stripped away all the political isms, all the shitisms, and the rigid ideologies that dominate our news cycles today, what would your ideal society actually look like?
Yeah, really think about it.
Is the perfect government one that enforces a strict moral and economic vision to keep everyone safe? Or is the perfect government one that completely steps out of the way, providing just the barest operating system imaginable, and lets human nature run its course, for better or worse?
It all comes back to that blank sheet of paper on your desk.
If you were holding the pen and writing that letter to the future leader, what kind of world would you demand? We'll leave you to think about that.